That was rough.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's not Lars Hanson. That's Alex Katson. He writes with me over at Huskies Wire. That down there, that is Lars Hanson, live from the whiteout at Penn State, where we just watched Washington get demolished 35-6 at the hands of the number 6 Penn State Nittany Lions. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Gentlemen, Alex here, welcome to the program. We're going to start with you here. We're going to get into a lot of really fun stuff today. We're going to talk about what's next for Washington. We're going to get into some of Jedd Fisch's comments about the starting quarterback for Friday's game against UCLA, but let's just big takeaways right off the bat. Again, Alex, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here under these circumstances. Let's call them. What was your biggest takeaway from this game?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Obviously, wish it was under better circumstances to make my first appearance on the show. But yeah, I mean, the big takeaway really is just that Penn State is a top 10 team in the country, and Washington isn't. You know, like Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter kind of just wrecked this game for Penn State, and Washington didn't have a guy that they could turn to respond. And so the game ended pretty quickly. And, you know, that's to be expected for a program that's in year one of a new era and lost so much after last year. And I think that it is pretty in line with what we've seen kind of throughout the season from them.
Lars, we've discussed this all week long. One of our shows earlier this week was Washington's offensive line is the key to this game. It's the biggest key by far. What did you see being out there in Pennsylvania?
Well, I mean, it was after the first drive, which took up 7 minutes of off. Like, that was ridiculous. The fact that UW had 10 minutes of offense in the first quarter and no points. To me, like, that was kind of what was going to be telling. And we didn't see Max McCree. He was suited before the game. Was actually not even wearing a brace on his thumb. Had an extra large black glove on his opposite hand, not the injured thumb hand. But he looked good to go. Didn't end up getting any snaps in that I saw tonight. And yeah, we talked about it going into the game. Abdul Carter, my word. Yeah. Like, there was no answer for Abdul Carter, and there was no answer anywhere along the offensive line for Washington. Jedd said one thing that kind of stood out post-game was that they had like 900 pounds or something difference in the two deeps. And that, to me, I'm like, well, yeah, that checks out. And, you know, it points to everything Alex said, which was, yeah, this is year one of the worst possible time to make a head coaching change after the portal closes. Can't do much. And so, I mean, honestly, I think glass half full. Give credit to Jedd for winning 5 games this year. You got in position to still win a 6th and get to a bowl game against UCLA, who did beat Iowa, who beat Washington. So, you know, again, that's not going to be maybe as easy as we thought. So, I mean, again, nothing was great about it. But, I mean, once you take a step back and think about what this season has been like and how bad things had to be, you know, put together, not by any fault of Jedd, just by circumstance, straight up by circumstance. And to me, it's like, yeah, it's not great, but there's only so much you can do.
Lars, quick question here from David. What was it like being at the whiteout? I was going to ask that anyway, so shout out to David. We got to get that in there real quick.
So it was incredible. And actually, shout out to my dad. He actually ended up getting upgraded seats to right in the end zone, front row. So shout out to him for that. Didn't end up staying for the whole game. I do not blame him one bit for that. But it was an incredible atmosphere. It really went to show you there's a league that's different that Washington is entering in, but still not fully in. Again, the Oregon game last year is one of a kind. But I'm talking that environment every single year for a whiteout. It was a different level. It was incredible. I thought it was hilarious. They played Eye of the Tiger for, you know, a lion, but, you know, that's here nor there. But again, it was an incredible atmosphere. State College is beautiful. The drive over is beautiful. Everything besides the game itself was incredible.
So I'm really glad you mentioned the atmosphere, because honestly, sitting back, I know, you know, we got a couple people in the comments saying they went to the IMAX to watch it, which was really cool, by the way. Shout out to NBC Sports for putting that on. If only the game turned out better, I feel like that's an amazing experience, because that was the first thing I thought of, Lars. Like, obviously, I'm not there, as everybody can see my background here on YouTube. But that was the first thing I thought of was the Oregon game last year. And thinking about the new conference where I'm going to tie this into an actual takeaway from the game as well. But moving into the new conference, that's what to expect every week. And it's on Washington fans to make sure that, week in, week out, that's what the environment is like at Husky Stadium too. And I feel that that's something that Husky fans have done a really good job of, especially, despite the circumstances of the season, despite the rain last week against USC, different things like that. Washington fans have done a really good job, but seeing it on that major setting with 110,000, I think they want to say, that were in the stadium, that's really cool. And that's all awesome. Lars, the very first thing you said about the whiteout, that Washington is moving into something different. This showed it. We talked about it before, right? Where we talked about it against Iowa. Talked about it, to an extent against Indiana as well, where Indiana, just feels like a team of destiny with everything they've done this season. But we look at some of these other losses, we look at this one in particular and say, you want to win the Big Ten, which Jedd has talked, ad nauseum about. You just saw what it looks like to go win the Big Ten. And, you look at everything that Washington is doing. You look at, the way they're building, the 2025 class. You look at a lot of that stuff and you say, all right, the vision is there. And I reference the 2025 class because Jedd has done that constantly. He said, we need to keep bringing players in. We need this. We need that. For sure. Absolutely. And you just got a taste of what it looks like when it's all going to be in place. But that's, it's no excuse for what it is now. But when you look at what the future can be, you say, all right, this is what you want it to look like. This is the framework of what you think Washington can be moving forward. And Alex, you talked about Abdul Carter. It starts there, but it's also along the offensive line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the fourth true road game that the Huskies have played, and all four of them have been theme nights for the opposing team. Rutgers did a blackout. Indiana did a red out. Iowa had the stripe out game, and then Penn State, the white out tonight, was kind of the final boss of those theme nights, right? We'll see if Oregon does something similar. I mean, obviously, it's a rivalry game, and so there's probably no additional thing that they need to get up for that one. But like you mentioned, this is what the Big Ten is going to look like year in and year out. This is what it's going to be. And especially for this Washington team, whether the team is the same as last year's or not, the Big Ten came in and they said, there's a target on these guys' backs because they just went to the national championship game. So we're going to stack all of these nights and we're going to introduce them to the Big Ten this season. And yeah, Washington hasn't been ready for it yet. The offensive line, I think, is obviously, we've talked about it all season, right? There's certain constraints that Washington was put under because of the timing of the coaching change and everything else like that. And we've talked about that ad nauseum, right? Where it's just there's not a lot of players in the spring portal that you can bring in and expect to be starting offensive linemen for you this season. There's not a lot of players in the portal that you can bring in to be starting offensive line for you, period. And so that part really does start with the high school recruiting. And I think that with the guys that they brought in this class of 2024, I know we're high on a couple of those guys, the guys that they have in 2025, they're going to get closer to that. And this staff, the way that they've recruited, they've shown that they know what you need in order to be competitive in the Big Ten. They're sending offers to the right guys. They're getting commitments from the right guys. It's just that this is the first year of it. And most of the guys that they brought over in this class of 2024, they brought in preparing for them to play at Arizona in the Big 12, not in the Big Ten this season. And so there's going to be a little bit of a transitionary period. There's going to be a little bit guys aren't necessarily prepared for that extra level that we've seen out of a team like Penn State, and that we're going to see out of a team like Oregon in a few weeks, and that they're going to see out of a team like Ohio State next year. Those programs have been doing this for years on end. I mean, even with Iowa, right? We talked about after the Iowa game that it's not necessarily that there was a huge talent differential in that game, but Iowa has been doing this for 20, 30 years under Kirk Ferentz and putting together these teams that are the two deep on the defensive line is entirely juniors and seniors. The two deep on the offensive line is entirely juniors and seniors. It's all experienced guys that have been in the system, have been in the strength and conditioning program that are ready to play. And Washington doesn't have that right now because of all the turnover that they've had to go through. And so it's going to be a process. And I know a lot of people want that process to move much more quickly than it's going because it's frustrating to watch a team lose like this week in and week out. But this staff has shown that they have that they're aware of that, right? They're aware of that process and they're building towards that, but it's going to be a process. It's going to take a couple of years.
Lars, real quick before we hit a break, any update from on Kaylee Tafai from Jedd Fisch?
Jedd said it didn't sound too severe. You peel back the curtain. Looked like he may have gotten in. I didn't see that, but from all indications it didn't sound like a severe injury. But I mean, looked pretty bad.
Now we got to get into the big question: what's going to happen with Demond Williams? We'll get there right after a message from our friends over at LinkedIn, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is a tool to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role in any given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the hiring process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Lars, let's start with you here, where the big question, we've got it in the comments here, and we've got a lot of things going on here. But the number one thing that Jedd Fisch certainly talked about in his post-game press conference, what's going to happen on Friday night with Demond Williams?
So Jedd said verbatim, at this moment in time, or at this point in time, I expect Will to be the starter Friday night. To me, again, it goes back to, was it Will's fault they lost tonight? Okay, he had the interception. Was it great? Nobody's winning behind that offensive line. Let's call a spade a spade. Putting Demond in there, and by the way, he took a shot on one of those first couple of pass attempts in the third quarter. And again, what did that tell you? There could be some PTSD that comes back from this if you put Demond in and he kind of, again, because the moment's not going to be too big for Demond. I'm not saying that, but there's a way to which this could backfire, and the fact that Jedd didn't play him in the first half gives him a full second half. I mean, Will's been such a good soldier. Again, he even said on KJR this week that he's going to play in the bowl game no matter what. If UW makes a bowl game, says he's not a guy who's going to quit on his team. Is Jedd really going to send him packing and basically say, hey, you know what? At 5-5 with a chance at a bowl game. Now, should Demond play more? Absolutely. My God. Like, how now, again, as I said in the first segment, Jedd wanted to get him in for one play in the first half, but there's got to be more to it than that. Like, there's got to be a little bit more involvement to get Demond to spark. We've seen so many plays from Demond, different types of plays, that he could have found a way to make a spark in that first half. To be fair, Jedd did point out, well, aside from the first drive, it was 4-play, 6-play, or 6-play, 4-play, and then halftime. So there wasn't a ton of opportunity. But maybe one of those two drives, put Demond in to start. Just give him, see what happens on first down with Demond. And then, if they move 20, 30 yards, then you can get back to Will. But to me, I still wouldn't. Again, Demond should play in the final two games plus the bowl game. I'm still not ready to say he's the starter. Not because he can't, but just the precedence that it sets. And the message you got to go. When you go back in the portal, saying, hey, we need some offensive linemen. We need some of these guys. Well, hey, you just threw a fifth-year starter to the line because you went 5-5.
Sure. So I think it goes a step beyond that as well, where this is something you and I have talked about ad nauseum on the show. And Alex, you and I have talked about this in the press box as well, where I feel, because Lars, you're absolutely right, where that's not the message you want to send. But if you want to take it a step further than that, you can also look at this and just say, look at what happened in the fourth quarter. Look what happened in the third quarter. Like, we had our buddy Jake Budd on the show last week. And when we said, hey, Jake, what do you think about putting Demond in the whiteout? He just shook his head and he was like, nope, don't like that. Where that's a big part of this, where he said, I played in that environment. That's not somewhere you want to throw a true freshman into. Throwing him in there in the second half of a 28-0 ball game, completely different story than, what I feel that some fans might be calling for. And I don't necessarily think they're wrong when you say, hey, he has a spark. He does this, he does that. Absolutely. Look at that 43-yard run that he had. He looks awesome. He has a lot of plays where you say, yeah, that's going to be the guy. 100%. That's going to be the guy. You look at that throw he made to Decker to Graff. There was PI on the play, but that throw he made to Decker in the end zone, that is just the sign of that dude's going to be a star. And then you also look at it, and it's not even just about UCLA this week. It's about Oregon next week, where you look at it and you say, Jedd Fisch had to take 2 timeouts in the third quarter. because Demond was not fully ready getting the team together. And that's, again, these are not things that are like completely Demond's fault. That is a true freshman against a crowd of 110,000 people and a top 10 pick on the edge who, they got 3 sacks in the fourth quarter. There are a lot of factors working against Demond, which is why, as you said, Lars, you don't want to throw them out there. You don't want to create those bad habits when you're putting 6 guys on the line and it's just, all 6 of those guys are coming and there are 5 blockers. Nothing good is about to happen here. There are so many of those plays, and it was very clear that Penn State showed that. UCLA would show that. Oregon, we know, would show that. So keep playing him. We're not saying don't play him, but keep him in the role that he is now. Maybe, go drive by drive against UCLA. That might be something that might work a little better. And I just, it's not time yet, but his time is coming, and it's just a matter of patience. And it's not just a will thing. There were plays tonight, and Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there were plays tonight where you can look at it and just say, yeah, that's still a freshman, that you want to make sure that you be really, really careful with that.
Yeah, I'm an alum, and so a lot of my friends are alums, right? And so we got in the midway through the first quarter, second quarter, and my buddy texts me, shout out my buddy Luke. He texts me and he's like, man, just put Demond in. At least it would improve my viewing experience. And the first thing I said to him is the same thing that Jake said to you guys, is like, I don't want to put a true freshman in the whiteout. Are you kidding me? Like I get the idea of like, oh, well, at least it would be entertaining. Like, we're getting crushed anyway. Like, who cares? But also, like, that had the potential to go a lot worse than it did. And that's a testament to Demond's preparation to be ready to play that well in this moment. Obviously, down 28-0, like you said, it's a completely different game plan than it would be for getting him in for a drive or something in the first or second quarter when they're only down 14-0, 21-0 still in the first half, right? I think that Lars makes a good point about he needs to play more. And I think that there's an element of this where it feels like Fisch and the coaching staff are waiting for drives to already be in rhythm before they bring Demond in to continue the rhythm that those drives are hitting. Or maybe if drives get into a rhythm and then start to stall out a little bit, but we're on play 7, 8, 9 of a drive, bring in Demond to try to spark it. I don't think that there's any reason why you can't just bring in Demond to start a drive and spark a drive to start it, right? Like, there's no reason why you can't bring him in for the first 2, 3 plays of a drive, get that drive sparked, and then bring Will back in to execute the rest of that drive. So I think that that's an opportunity for them. But ultimately, I tweeted this as well after Lars posted that quote from Jedd about the fact that Will is going to start on Friday, which is that it's kind of what I figured. Like, when they said Demond was going to start the second half, right? It's like, okay, you're down 28-0 in an environment where Rodgers is getting killed. Like, the offensive line clearly is not doing him any favors. They didn't really do Demond that many favors either, but Demond at least has a little bit more escapability to make some of those plays, and we saw that tonight. But next week is your best chance at getting bowl eligible, pretty clearly, because your other game is against the number 1 team in the country. And so Jedd has talked about over and over and over again the last couple of weeks about how important those extra 15 practices are if you make a bowl game. And so once you're down 28-0 in this game, you're clearly not going to get bowl eligible off of this week. And you have a short week traveling back from the East Coast late night Saturday night to come back and play UCLA on Friday night, who's going to have a full week to prepare for that game because they just played on Friday night this week too. And so if you're thinking about just the wear and tear aspect of it, just the player maintenance of it, right? That's your best chance to get bowl eligible, and you need your starting quarterback to be healthy for that game. And so you're not going to come back in this game. I know down 28-0 only at halftime, you don't want to say, oh, we're completely out of this. But like, the context in which they got down 28-0 in that game was over at halftime. And so there's no reason to put Will back out there to continue taking hits and potentially lose him for what's going to be ultimately an incredibly important game on Friday against UCLA. Now, that doesn't mean that they should just send Demond out there to get killed against Penn State and have him take all those hits and potentially risk an injury to him. Because again, we're all in agreement that he should be playing more. I think that they need to give him some more opportunity in true passing situations. You know, these plays that they've brought him in for outside of tonight, when they've had him play the whole second half, they're really just asking him to come in and do read option. They're not asking him to pass the ball very much. And I think that there's an opportunity there. Like Roman, you mentioned that throw to Decker McGrath on the pass interference throw, and there are a couple other ones on Saturday as well, where it's like he's clearly got the talent to throw the ball now. It's not like you're waiting for him to develop as a passer. And so I think that there's opportunity for them to incorporate him more into the game plan, but also just from an operational standpoint. And again, from a program management standpoint, Rodgers came in and was immediately named a captain, right? Like, this isn't a guy that you can just toss aside. I get that it's not your guy. He didn't commit to you guys. He didn't commit to this staff, but he was still named a captain. He's been the starter all year. Outside of the last couple of weeks, he's played decently well. And again, like, tonight was not his fault. Tonight was not on Will Rogers. That's not why Washington lost this game. And so operationally, I think that he still ultimately gives you the best chance in a full game. Damon still needs to play more, but Will gives you the best chance over a full 60 minutes.
With that being said, let's get into what's next for this team, because we saw a lot of young guys out there in the second half, and this isn't just a 2025 conversation. Are we going to see more Keith Reynolds, Adam Mohammed, some of these other young guys down the stretch? With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now only available for $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product-specific disclosures. Visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We've also got a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And I've been hammering this all season long. You got to get in on these Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year odds. They're only going to keep going down as he keeps winning after that Marshawn Lattimore trade. I think that the Commanders might end up winning the NFC East, especially if they beat the Eagles on Thursday night. Things are looking real good there in Washington. You can go check out all those odds and so many more over on FanDuel. Lars, let's start with you here. What's next for this Washington team? There's so many different things that you can look at and point at and say, because this is not the same UCLA team that we thought we were getting a month ago. This coming Friday. This is a much better team. They beat Iowa, who Washington could not beat. They beat them on Friday night. And you look at this next game and you say, I don't know what I'm getting. I really don't. Are we going to see more of these young guys, or are we going to see maybe a big day from Jeremiah Hunter or somebody else?
I mean, this is the ultimate trap game because, the way that tonight played out, they should be motivated. Will should be motivated to pick apart UCLA. Jonah should be able to motivate himself after not rushing for everything over 50 yards tonight. Jonah had 32, I want to say, if that. I mean, that's
24.
20, I was going to say, I thought it was lower.
Well, I think he might have had 34 total, but then with all the minus yards and all those sort of things. So there's a lot to play for in this game for the veterans to just, make the season right going into Oregon. Because, I mean, first of all, Cam Davis, not on the availability report, didn't get a snap tonight. So we're able to throw a running back out of the room who said, and I'm not saying he threw him out of the room, but just kind of, quietly ushering in Adam Mohammed more, because it wasn't like Adam had that great of a game. I mean, again, this gets back to the offensive line. What's going to change between now and Friday night? Sure. Except for maybe you don't face as good of a defense, but I don't know if that changes anything. I mean, maybe UCLA is motivated after this Iowa win to say, hey, you know what? We might actually be able to get bowl eligible. Because, by the way, now they could with another win. Sure. And so, it's right there for both these teams. And so, to me, I mean, it's it's already too late in the season to make some drastic changes. Again, the only thing you could do would be Demond. That's not going to happen. And even if it does, I'm not sure Demond is the reason you beat UCLA and why you don't beat UCLA if he doesn't start. So to me, you got to figure out the left tackle. If Kaylee can't go, hopefully Max the week after, resting today and not getting in, maybe he's able to go. That would be that. Where we go next? Get some guys back from injury. That's probably where I would start.
I feel like that's really hampered the team this year. I'm glad you bring up Max McCree, where that was something Jedd told us earlier in the week, that he'd be available in an emergency situation. Said it might be that way for the rest of the season, but if he's playing without, or not playing, but if he's on the sideline without the brace today, that's a really good sign for next week. Where that's maybe, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's throw him out there. Let's see what he's got. That could be a positive. But one thing I'm really looking for, you mentioned Adam Mohammed, and yeah, 8 carries for 20 yards, certainly not a great day for him, but it being a career high, that almost seems like they're willing to usher him in. And, I have a feeling, especially on senior day next week, we're going to see a lot more Cam Davis, where that also felt like a really game script dependent thing, because it wasn't just Adam, right? It was Keith Reynolds. It was Decker DeGraff, who got basically all the reps at tight end. It was Rashid Williams. We saw Jordan Washington today. Jordan Washington got his first touch. So it was a lot of those young guys on offense, where the defense, we saw Devin Bryan and Peyton Waters in there at the end of the game as well. But offensively, just to be more specific, with all those guys, we saw all the young guys once Will got pulled, because we didn't see Jonah in the second half. We didn't see a lot of those guys, because that was very clear. It was, hey, let's see what the Demond group, the 2025 group, has in store. We didn't see Giles Jackson. We barely saw Jeremiah Hunter. So I feel like that was more the inclination on offense and it being a Cam Davis thing. But at the same point, I'm still really excited about what the future of this team can hold. I don't think we're going to see it next week. But Alex, was there any takeaway that you saw in that second half outside of Demond, where watching him make plays is so much fun, that really just said, okay, yeah, this is what I really see is what's next for this team?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Mohammed only having 20 yards, I think, kind of underscores how good he was on Saturday. I think that he had a couple of nice runs. I thought that he played pretty well, all things considered, with how poorly the offensive line was playing. I think that the thing to keep in mind for UCLA too is that they did beat Iowa on Friday, but Iowa was also playing with a backup quarterback that then got injured and brought in their 5th string quarterback to finish that game.
Hey, so, that's one-time UW commit Jackson Stratton to you.
That's true. That's true. No slander here. I'm just saying that, objectively speaking, he was 5th on the depth chart entering the season. And so, yes, it's a good win, obviously, to beat Iowa. It's a team that Washington couldn't beat, but Washington also had to play them when Cade McNamara was playing in the game. And so it's a little bit different circumstantially. But I think that for the Huskies, like Lars said, it's really just getting some of these guys back from injury. If Max doesn't have a brace on his hand and there's been some new development, he's going to be available against UCLA to play at left tackle. That's a huge step up. If Zach Durfee is able to play next week as he recovers from turf toe, that's going to be a huge step up. I think that you've seen, obviously you're not getting Javon Parker back this season. He has a torn Achilles, but you've seen since Javon went out, and then also since Zach has gone out, that the run defense has really struggled. And I think a lot of that has to do with how well Zach sets that edge, because the guys that they're bringing in to play in his stead with him out, whether it be Deshaun Lynch or Voy or whoever it may be on that edge, right? Isaiah Ward is being asked to play more of a primary role. Those guys are not performing on the edge in run defense quite as well. And Dyson McCutcheon was questionable today. He's been sort of splitting reps with Jordan Shaw in the nickel. Shaw had to move outside when Thaddeus Dixon got ejected for targeting, which was a huge part of this game that we haven't really talked about because he only played for 5 plays. And so there's just a lot of guys that you just didn't get to see this week, right? And so getting Thad back, getting Durfee back potentially, getting McCree back potentially, that I think is the biggest thing, right? Because it's just you get a left tackle back, and then it's immediately the offensive line is you're so much more confident. And you can say, all right, we're going to put Will out there. We're going to be able to run more of the plays that we want to run. You get Zach back out there and you're all right, we can defend the run again. We can sort of limit them to, they have to do this. And we don't have to worry about Carson and Alfonso and Cam having to come up and fit the run and getting, abused over their head in pass coverage, over the middle, right?
Yeah. So before we get out of here, just talking about what's next, I got a question for each of you guys. I got an answer as well, because I feel like when we talk about what's next, this is the biggest thing. There are 2 games left in the regular season, potentially a 3rd game if Washington can get to a bowl. When we get into transfer portal season, which is not too far off, what is the number one thing that you guys are looking for this team to go after in the transfer portal? Because personally, I think there is a right answer here. Lars, let's start with you.
Interior offensive or defensive line.
Yeah,
like, I think it's absolutely offensive lineman. That's the easiest answer. That's the layup answer. But in reality, Valdez is out of options. Bandis is out of options. Logan Sagapalu, Voy's edge. Voy's gone either way, but I'm sure Voy could be inside, outside. And the guys behind them, I mean, again, Javon is the kind of, enigma in the room where you're not getting him back. That's significant. I mean, I think
Armon as well, too.
Right, but no offense to Armon, we just haven't seen him play, whereas we saw Javon really good against the run early on in the season when he was playing. That, I think, those are 2 significant losses, and so that's where they're going to, A1 priority has to be interior defensive line.
I couldn't agree with you more. Alex?
Yeah, I think that certainly is what springs to mind. I think that again, like you mentioned, Bandis and Valdez both being out of eligibility. Those are 2 guys that have started basically for them all year. I think the other place that I would look at, I think D-tackle is the number 1 for me, but I think the other place you look at is linebacker, right? Where Carson is out of eligibility, Zoe is out of eligibility, Drew Fowler is out of eligibility. Kamari House comes back, but he's going to be a true sophomore. You have a couple of guys coming in this class of 2025 that can potentially play right away, but do you really want to rely on a true freshman starting all year? Which, Kamari didn't have to start all year. He's kind of eased into that role a little bit over the course of the season and then just happened to develop enough where we've been able to see him more and more this year. But you're going to be relying on that from 2 or 3 other guys in this rotation next year. And so I think that linebacker is another one, really just building the spine of that defense to defend these Big Ten offenses that are going to be running the ball down your throat over and over and over again.
I think you guys are both absolutely right. Where, Alex, the one thing I'd say at linebacker is I'm really curious to see if Devin Bryant takes a step forward next season, where that's a guy I'm really looking at as maybe he steps into a bigger role. I know he always does in College Football 25 for any of my fellow Dynasty heads out there. I love doing this to Lars.
Good point.
Thank you. I know. But no, I think that's a really great point by you, because then, you look at the guys coming in, Zadrius Rainey-Sale, Jonathan Epperson, Donovan Robinson being another one. Maybe that's a position they're looking to try to take one more guy and see what that looks like. But if I were to pick a top number 1 position, it certainly is defensive tackle, because you look at everything in there, and that's where, losing Zach Durfee has really been just so critical this season, where Jedd's talked about it. And the more we look at it, the more we say, whenever the run defense is struggling, it's what we saw when Zach Durfee was in there. We saw them take a big step forward. We saw it against Rutgers. We saw it when he was in there against Michigan. And then once he came out, that's really been where a lot of problems have just been started. And is that, the end all be all? Absolutely not. Javon Parker, obviously another huge factor in that. But you go and you look at it and, obviously you talk about the portal, you talk about having to pay a premium, whatever it might be. But if you were to invest in one position, I feel like it's there. And with the way this class is shaping up, there's going to be a lot of other talent around that, you look at offensive line, look at all these other places with all those guys taking a step forward next season. And you can say, all right, there are some solid building blocks there. And I feel like at some of those skill positions, we're going to see that over the end of the season. Gentlemen, to both of you, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. This has been a lot of fun. Lars with a nice little shot of a Beaver Stadium there in the background. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here, like I said. And if you like what we have to offer, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, up right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.